Ivor Blumenthal, and I am the facilitator of a neutral organization, an industry neutral organization, should I say a sectoral neutral organization called the Professional Body for Digital Practitioners. It is a voluntary professional body with the intention, as it is running once the pilots are completed, of having that professional body registered with the South African Qualifications Authority, and in fact having the professional designations, which is the meat and potato of the professional body, having the professional designations also registered on the National Qualification Framework with the South African Qualifications Authority. The model of how a professional body gets created is that it has to be living on a voluntary basis before SAQA, the South African Qualifications Authority, is prepared to actually register that organization. Professional bodies will always be non-statutory bodies, because statutory bodies are protected by acts of parliament, and they normally fall under different government departments, such as, for example, the Medical and Dental Council, etc., or the Allied Health Professions Council, etc., Engineering Council. So the Professional Body for Digital Practitioners will always be a voluntary organization registered with the South African Qualifications Authority, and it is the highest, it is the best form of self-governance. It is an indication that employers and employees have come together and said, we want to professionalize our sector, and we want our sector to be recognized. And this is the starting point. We want our sector to be recognized as professional. Digital, of course, is one of those weird terms which cuts across every industry in every economy around the world, but it is equally recognized within the international community as being very specific within the context of the sector that we're going to be talking about today. And it is within that context that we're creating the digital professional body, not general digital practice, but the digital professional body. It relates to practitioners who spend all of their time on digital work, or alternatively companies which are completely dedicated, or at least in part dedicated, to digital work. So the Professional Body for Digital Practitioners was started when Jared Sinman, in fact, was at the helm of the IAB South Africa, the Interactive Advertising Bureau of South Africa, when he was president of the IAB, with a view to professionalizing the sector. It has come a long way in terms of operational formation. It has come a long way, and this is the year 2019 is the year of piloting. The IAB is one of the patrons of the Professional Body for Digital Practitioners. It was the initial patron of the Professional Body for Digital Practitioners. And indeed, or should I say, in fact, one of the requirements within a professional body is that for a company to benefit from being a corporate member of a professional body, it has to be affiliated to an association. At this moment in time, the only association we have a relationship with is the IAB, but it is not inconceivable that down the line, additional associations will raise their hands and say, we also want to be affiliated with the professional body. And that is certainly the ideal down the line, that irrespective of which association you are accountable to, you have to be accountable to an association, because being accountable to a collection of your peers means that you're accountable to a common code of ethics, a common set of standards, etc. And it is that level of quality assurance that we will always trying to be enforcing, or at least advocating. So the Professional Body for Digital Practitioners is a voluntary organization. And at this moment in time, the patrons, as I've mentioned, is the IAB South Africa, and in fact, Blue Magnet as an organization, which in fact will be the very first designation center of the professional body. And I'll get into designation centers a little later. By the way, this discussion is not intended to go beyond as a maximum 45 minutes, but hopefully 30 minutes. Please feel free to ask questions. You can ask questions in two ways. Either you can unmute your microphone, or alternatively, you can simply type into the chat box, which is at the bottom of the screen. So please feel free to do that. All right. So the sector of the professional body, the sector of the Professional Body for Digital Practitioners. It is ostensibly a sector which consists of agencies, publishers, consultants and educators, and specifically when it comes to brands, in-house digital practitioners and in-house digital consultants. I like to refer to it as a consulting process. So the sector, as we've identified it to date, is a sector which will cover agencies, publishers, consultants, and educators, and then brands, specifically in-house consulting. There's no question that when it comes to dedicated digital services, there are many more dedicated digital services out there. But for the purposes of initiating the structure, we are focusing on the agency work, to some extent on the content development work, i.e. the publishers, the consultants and educators, particularly those independent contractors out there, and then the internal consultants who spend their time with digital work, and particularly as the intercept between the company and the agency or the service provider. Those are the individuals we're focusing on. Those are the individuals that we're actually looking at. The objectives of the professional body. Well, certainly, we want the individual who is working in digital to be benefiting. That means we want them to have independent recognition of their professional status, their competency and the currency of that competency, and their behavior, recognition that their behavior is acceptable and accountable. We want and we need that to be independent. When I say independent, I mean independent of their existing or their current employer. So the reality is it is the individual who will be a designated beneficiary of what it is the professional body will offer, not the company. We want to have a relationship with the company, but only on behalf of the people who work for that company, not as an employer association. The professional body itself is neither a trade association nor an employer association. In this instance, one might very well say that it is the IAB South Africa, which is in fact the trade association for digital and brings its membership, its corporate members, into the professional body for the purpose of ensuring that the people who work within that corporate member are in fact professionally recognized, professionally designated by the professional body. So those are the benefits for the individual working in digital. There's, of course, benefits for the company employing digital practitioners. Number one, distinction in the marketplace, the recognition of excellence, accountability, competency, and ethical standards of employees being the primary mark or reason for distinguishing your company from companies which in fact do not have a relationship either with an association such as the IAB South Africa, or alternatively employ individuals who are recognized, branded as digital professional practitioners by the professional body. So it is very much distinguishing yourself in the marketplace that we are talking about here when we talk to you, the company. There's no question that the third set of benefits accrue to the consumer and to the public at large. And here we're talking about the public being aware that if they do business with a individual who has professional recognition, that individual is accountable as a practitioner, and that if a company does business with a company which offers digital services, where that company is a member of the IAB and its staff are in fact professionally recognized by the professional body, there is accountability as a company. And it is that level of accountability that talks about self-governance, talks about professionalism, and it talks against, I suppose, the notion of fake content and the idea that any 12-year-old with a computer can set up a digital company and offer digital services. So the objectives of the professional body, I think, need to be made very clear, and I hope you do understand it. Now, when it comes to the machine of the professional body, the primary tool of the professional body is that of designation centers. And I'm just going to enlarge the screen so you can see it. So the primary tool of a professional body is that of the designation center. And the object of the exercise is to make sure that where there are experienced, trained, and well-capacitated organizations out there, we are not going to reinvent the wheel. Instead, we want to, if you want, accredit those institutions and work with those quality institutions to make sure that they offer professional body services, and the professional body simply quality assures the services offered by those pre-existing organizations. So, for example, there are three kinds at this stage. There will be three types of designation centers. So in the case of Blue Magnet has close to 10,000 graduates in one form or another, and therefore it would be regarded as a large training provider. And in a relationship as a designation center, a separate relationship, I might add, as a separate organization independent of the training entity. It would then process its graduates for purposes of professional recognition by the professional body and subject to the final authorization from the professional body of the work that is being done. I'll talk in a little while about how those quality assurance checks and balances happen. So the large training provider has an opportunity to become a professional body, and indeed that is what we like to encourage and we want to encourage. The second kind of professional body, and in fact they might be one and the same, are provincial designation centers, and we're looking to ensure that over time we have at least one, if not more, designation centers in each province representing the interests of the professional body and the community of digital at large. And then the third kind of designation center is an in-house designation center where there's a critical mass, a critical size of a digital company which has the capacity to establish an in-house operation for purposes of professional recognition. Professional recognition, by the way, having a number of objectives, and we'll get to that as well in a little while. So the primary tool of the professional body is the designation center. As far as designations are concerned, when you start a professional body, you start with the very obvious, and over time, you develop the complicated. So as we are at the beginning or the inception stage of the professional body for digital practitioners, there are three primary or operational levels of recognition. The first, which is the professional digital technician at the technical level or the entry level. The second, which is the professional digital operator, which is at the mid-level. Very often, this is the meat and potato part of a company, the people who do most of the business, but are not yet recognized as fully professional. And then there is the chartered digital practitioner, the chartered digital professional practitioner at the highest level of the operational step ladder, if you want, of recognition. The fourth level of designation that we're recognizing will be one which is conferred upon an individual, and it is the master level, the master digital practitioner. And this is an individual who might have had multiple industries worth of experience and certainly many, many years of experience given the averages in the industry or in the sector. So it is the first three that will be rolled out in 2019. And in the second half of 2019, the master digital practitioner will also be recognized amongst the fraternity of members of the association or associations that we have a relationship with as the professional body. Again, I'm going to say the professional body is a body which is independent of the IAB. It is independent of all of the designation centers. It is a standalone organization, and I'll talk about governance of it in a little while. The three elements of professional designation that people need to take cognizance of are the elements of competency, experience, and integrity. Competency, experience, and integrity. So when it comes to competence, we're saying that, or rather when it comes to these three elements, we're saying that we recognize a professional if all three of these things have been verified about that individual, that they are competent. In other words, that they have either received training or that they've been in the job for so long that they can be RPL'd or recognized for their highest level of competency against the same outcomes as if they had received training. So RPL is normally reserved for people who do not have the requisite qualifications, but have been in the industry for a period of time and have been doing the job. So there are two mechanisms to being recognized as competent. The one is that you achieve a qualification which is recognized by the professional body, and the other is that you go through a route of recognition of prior learning to get to the same place, to be recognized as competent. The second element of being recognized as a professional is that of experience. And here we're saying, have you had the relevant amount of experience over the period of time that we're considering in relation to what you would have become competent to do? In other words, your qualifications. So an individual will have a portfolio of evidence, and that portfolio of evidence might have at least performance appraisals in it or evidence of performance appraisals, at best a portfolio of actual work that's been done in the past. And so that portfolio of evidence, which will be in the individual's vault on our system, will be able to be assessed. And it is the competence in combination with the experience in combination with the individual's integrity level, which allows us to then declare the person to be a professional or to say to a person there is remediation which is required. When it comes to the third component, the integrity component, we're talking here about annual personal references from their employer or previous employers or clients based on their competence and based on their behavior. And so it is in the combination of those three, and I'm going to say, and I'll say this again and again and again, at this stage, it is an art, not a science, how we do these things, but over time it will become a science. But it is in the combination of these three elements that we can declare an individual to be professional at any of the three levels, technical, operational, or the professional level, or not yet professional. I sometimes use the example of the best supply chain practitioner in the world, believe it or not, and that is the person who works for the Guptas. That must be the best supply chain practitioner in the world, managing to get trillions of rands out of South Africa and doing it in such a way that it's spread around the world. And from a supply chain perspective, they know everything there is to know about supply chain management, transport, logistics, etc. However, that individual would never be declared as a professional because while they're certainly competent, while they're certainly experienced, from an integrity point of view, there are very often, in this instance, there certainly are shortcomings about their integrity. And hence, from a professional body point of view, we would prefer to say to that individual, thank you, but in fact, we cannot recognize you as a professional because while you are competent, you're no doubt experienced. From an integrity point of view, there are many questions to be asked about your personal integrity. Jared, I see your question. It says, so we're modeling ourselves on the Guptas. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely not. Thank you for that. Right, moving on. The machine for professional recognition. Well, the machine for the professional recognition is primarily an online management information system that has been built. It's been built for us by E2. Now, E2, in fact, run the professional body management information portals for over 28 different professional bodies, the majority of whom are in the health and the medical fraternity and sector. But in reality, many management professional bodies as well, and blue-collar professional bodies as that. So that E2 have a wealth of experience across a range of professional bodies to the extent that, quite frankly, we know we're in good hands. It's taken a while to build that online portal. At the moment, it is going through beta, and we anticipate that from the 1st of February, we will be in a position to utilize it within our piloting set of activities amongst the companies that agree to be piloted for purposes of those first three professional designations, technical, operational, and professional. So our online portal is our primary mechanism of management of professional body activities, and each designation center will have access and be a user on our online portal. That portal, by the way, as I mentioned a little earlier, has a portfolio of evidence vault for every individual applying to be recognized by the professional body and to receive professional designation. Critically important. It is that evidence vault that, in fact, is the go-to place for assessors and moderators who are deciding whether or not to confer professional designation and to recommend professional designation. It is their go-to place to find out more about the applicant and their individual, have a look at their various documents, and from there to provide feedback, to spur on remediation, etc., that needs to take place. That machine, the machine we are building, is a machine which is peopled. So it's not just an online portal, but behind it there is an entire neutral administration section. There is a neutral assessment of applications by trained assessors, a moderation of the work done by those assessors by moderators, and a confirmation of applications by trained assessors in the process will result. There are mechanisms which provide opportunities for remediation, and very often, especially in the area of recognition of prior learning or RPL, where a person doesn't have a qualification, there is a need for remediation, and that is managed through this machine. And then finally, the awarding of designations, which is the beginning of the designation process, not the end of the designation process. I do have to emphasize ladies and gentlemen. The beginning of the designation process, not the end of the designation process. When do you know an individual is a professional? Not when you've given them a professional designation, but when it comes time to re-register them, to reconfer their professional designation, where you've managed to track their competence and their behavior and their participation in continuous professional development over a 3-year period, where there is a requirement on those individuals to participate in continuous professional development, and where they do or they don't, where there are charges of ethical misappropriateness brought against the individual that have to be investigated by either the professional body, the designation center, or in this instance by the IAB to which the professional body would defer, then you know whether the person is the right kind of person to be re-designated as a professional or not. So it is only once you are in bed with the individual that you really get to know that individual. A strange comment, but unfortunately, those of you who are married will know that's very, very true. Okay, moving on. And as I said, the being designated is the first stage. It is the first stage that we want to get to. But then the requirement for lifelong learning kicks in, and the machine for lifelong learning and best practice becomes the next component of what the professional body manages through its designation center. And it is a continuous professional development in best practices machine. We endorse in-house training and in-house meeting and in-house tool, resource talent management activities. We endorse training providers for their continuous professional development modules. We endorse suppliers for their training in terms of the systems knowledge that they train into the marketplace, their product knowledge that they train into the marketplace. So all of these things in combination make up the continuous professional development wealth of resources that are on offer to an individual who has been professionally designated. When it comes to the IAB has conferences, it has summits, it has bookmarks, and all of those activities are worthy of being recognized for continuous professional development purposes, so that an individual who is professionally designated and participates in those IAB activities will gain the CPD points they need to gain to be re-registered down the line, As far as quality control is concerned, it is critically important that you understand that we want the professional body to be a quality controller rather than necessarily operationally managing the professional body activities on a day-to-day basis. And it is for that reason that we've chosen to go the route of the designation centers to do that day-to-day interaction with the designee and the person applying in the company that wants its staff professionally designated. And from a quality control point of view, the professional body will be responsible for the endorsement, which in another world might be called accreditation, but in our instance is called the endorsement of training providers themselves, of learning programs that they have offering, that they're able to offer, either whole learning programs, which are SAQA accredited learning programs or QCTO accredited learning programs, or non-accredited qualifications. And those of you who are triple BE rated will know that the last 3 categories that you can obtain your skills development points for will be in this non-accredited arena rather than in the accredited arena. And that if you're lucky enough to become a YES company, you can spend up to 50% of your skills development funding on these non-accredited qualifications and modules, as opposed to only being able to spend on wholly accredited qualifications. And then finally, from a quality control endorsement perspective, we endorse those CPD elements that are in-house training provider or supplier offered. And I think that that is a critical issue to consider. Before I get to governance and oversight, are there any questions? Does anyone want to ask a question with regard to anything I've said thus far?
Hi, it's Jared. How are you?
Welcome. Fine, thanks, and you?
Good. So it's awesome to see this having taken shape. I mean, obviously, it's come a long way since I was involved. What I wanted to ask, just a couple. Let me just start with one question, which is, can you explain more? So part of the rationale for this and how we're going to sell it to businesses is, I mean, for me, there's kind of 2 critical things. The one is it's a way of growing staff and and helping staff to feel more professionalized within this industry, and therefore when they go apply for other jobs, they will have some kind of qualification which is sorely lacking. So that's the one piece. The other piece is helping companies to be more efficient with their BE money spend, their skills development spend, and enabling them to spend that money either internally or with other training providers which don't have the normal government accreditation. Can you explain more on that second point? So how does this end up helping people to be more efficient with their skills development spend, and to use that money, which they have to spend anyway, in a way that that they can't do now?
Thank you very much for the question, Jared. All right, so let me start with triple BE, and let me say this to you, that in terms of the 5 elements, or in your instance, the 6 elements that you would be measured against in terms of triple BE, the second element is management control, where you're in fact able to implement a management development program where you're able to say, for example, we're losing points on management control at the moment in triple BE. But what we're wanting to do is implement a 24-month management development program. And over that 24-month period, as long as the individuals that we're looking at identifying participating in that program have a certain amount of managerial responsibility at the requisite level, and it can be entry level or a senior level, and have a certain amount of accountability to the company in terms of either policy development or whatever it is, but importantly, equally, over that 12-month or 24-month period, have to obtain a professional designation. The professional designation therefore attests to the fact that in terms of management control, they would either have attained a qualification or been RPL'd within that period of time, and importantly, that they're accountable as managers. So you can, within your company, say that a team leader, for example, which is the entry level of manager, is someone who would have to be a professionally designated operator, as would a supervisor, whereas a first-line manager would need to be a chartered a digital professional practitioner of some form or another. So the second element is management control, where you immediately build in your professional designations, and any skills spent on professional body or professional designation activity would be recognized by your verification agency. That is the objective here, that first level of skills spent under management control would be recognized. Then we come to skills development itself. And there's no question that if you look at the regulations on skills development spend tell you that there are about 6, there are now 7 areas where you can spend your money, and they're in an appendix, by the way, to the regulations, the new regulations which came out for publication last May. If you want, by the way, I can distribute those to everybody on the line, or in fact to everybody in this group. I'm very happy to do that. So in that regard, then, the last 2 of the original 6 categories, but now the last 3 of the current 7 categories of where you can spend your money relate specifically to professional designation, professional body activity, and importantly, to non-accredited training. So you're entitled at the moment to spend up to 15% of your skills development spend on non-accredited training. That is going to be going up to 25%. And in fact, if you're a yes company, as a yes company, you're entitled to spend up to 50% of your skills development spend on non-accredited training. The third area is in terms of enterprise development and supplier development, where you might, for example, want to spend money on skills development training rather than professional recognition, such as venture creation, new venture creation at enterprise development level, and logistics training or whatever it is, even digital designation requirements for your suppliers. So, for example, if you fund your supplier going through some kind of a professional designation process, that would be recognized as supplier development funding there as well. And very finally, socioeconomic investment. If you put together a bursary fund, and I have suggested this to the IAB previously, if you put together a bursary fund even, and that bursary fund then will cover digital qualifications and even digital designation from a professional body, you're entitled also under SEI to count the money spent there on skills development. I hope that answers your question, Jared.
So it does. I just want to make sure I understand one piece, which is in the course of setting up this professional body, my understanding was, where I started in my thinking on this whole thing was, if we are offering accreditation, any learning that you do in the service of getting that accreditation is seen as accredited learning in terms of the scorecard. Is that true?
So where we're offering a professional designation, which is eventually registered with SAQA as a professional designation, then the cost incurred in attaining the professional designation itself, irrespective of the learning, those costs are immediately recognizable. Then the cost in obtaining the qualification or going through the RPL process required to get to the designation and go through the summative assessment, those costs are equally, you're able to set them off against skills development.
The accredited part of skills development, not the unaccredited part.
No. So skills development spend against skills development spend.
Yeah, but remember, there's an 85-15 split, as you mentioned just now. So is this part of the 85? I guess not the 15.
This is the 15% that will be going up to 25%, and eventually for yes companies to 50%. So this at the moment is the 15%. However,
But why is that? Because my understanding was what government's trying to do is encourage professional bodies to accredit, and that if you're doing that, that's the 85% of the training budget.
No, it's so you use the term accrediting. So if a professional body endorses and recognizes, for example, let me just think about it, red and yellow, a red and yellow program, which is accredited by SAQA. The money you spend on red and yellow is 100% skills development deductible. The money you spend on bringing proof of that certification to the professional body so that the professional body can give a professional designation to the individual is deductible in terms of the 15% of what your skills development budget should be. In other words, the principle is that you shouldn't be their principle is, I don't agree with it, but their principle is that you shouldn't be spending more than 15% of your skills development budget on the final stage, which is the professional recognition. You should be spending the money on the training and the development and the continuous professional development elements, but not on the professional recognition itself beyond that 15%. Now, as I say, that is going to go up now to 25% in terms of the recommendations. And then if you become a yes company down the line so that you want to skip 1 or 2 triple BE levels, up to 50% of your skills development budget.
Okay, look, I mean, I'd love to talk more about this with you offline because I have some thoughts around it.
Of course.
And I just want to get clear. The other thing I wanted to say is, and I'm sure maybe this is part of your plan that you're still getting to, but I guess I'm quite interested in how we're going to engage the industry, the recruitment industry, the agencies, the training, like how we're going to reach out to those people. Because this is quite complex, what you've got. I mean, by nature, it is quite complex. But I think like this is an exciting message if it's packaged right. So, yeah, I would love to also be a part of figuring that out.
Thanks so much. Okay, so I'm very opportunistically, I'm now at the stage of talking about governance and oversight. So, whereas I mentioned to you that there are the various industries which constitute the digital sector as we're defining it, which are agencies, publishers, etc., etc. Though each of those would be constituted within the professional body as a chamber, very much like the IAB would have your chapters. Or your councils. And so the National Council of the professional body is constituted from those chambers, from representatives from those chambers. So, for example, from the agency representatives, the publisher representatives, the consultant and training representatives, the brand representatives would constitute the National Council. That National Council has subcommittees, and these are the current ones: designation, design and review, quality assurance, education and endorsement, and what you're talking about, Jared, which is marketing, how we take this to market, how we keep the message current, front of mind, and importantly, how the value proposition becomes one of those non-negotiables, at least for CEOs, if not for individuals who work in companies. I must tell you, I'm in the habit now of asking companies to allow me to come in and just do a general presentation on this to staff members. And I must tell you that the staff are biting at the bullet, waiting for this to happen, because they realize that it offers them professional recognition independently of the companies they work for. Not that they ever want to leave those companies, but it offers them an independent sense of self-worth and therefore contributes to the notion of self-governance within the industry. And our government recognizes industries which have social partners, organized business, organized labor. So it's very, very important from a marketing point of view that marketing committee gets to grips with how to take this to market, how to keep the message relevant, and how to keep building on the opportunities. The final subcommittee in terms of governance and oversight is the Continuous Professional Development Committee. We have on average between 15 and 20 people who've been nominated through the various industry mechanisms onto these various subcommittees. And in fact, we begin the work of subcommittee delineation, explanation, mandating next week, in fact, so that we can get this fast-tracked. Good. So just moving on then. So it is in that marketing committee that we want to, in fact, devise the way and the policy and the mechanisms of taking this thing to market, including, by the way, the notion that we eventually want the IAB to say to companies which are its members, we want to grade you. And on the mechanisms of grading, one of the very first mechanisms will be professional penetration amongst your staff. We want IAB members to have at least between 50 and 80% of its staff members at the various levels professionally designated and professionally recognized. That's ultimately the most accomplished statement, value proposition for professional recognition that we can get, and that's where we want to get down the line. As far as ethics are concerned, every professional body stands for this. Every professional body stands for this. It says that an individual's ethical conduct will be managed in terms of their competency, but equally in terms of their behavior. And we have an opportunity because of your MAC Charter to bring in the ethical management of responsible marketing amongst those companies and individuals who work within those companies. Ethics is a very difficult thing to manage. And what the professional body prefers to do, instead of setting up its own sense of ethical management, what the professional body would want to do is enter into an agreement with the IAB and other associations affiliated with the professional body so that it quality assures how that association, which is a trade or an employer association, how it manages the ethical conduct of its member companies. So it defers ethical investigations to the association that the company is a member of. And that's why we say we want companies that want to be associated with a professional body to have to be members of an association such as the IAB, which has a code of conduct and which has a relationship with the professional body, where the professional body is in fact able to quality assure how the association manages its code of conduct in terms of best international practice. And I realize this is a ton of thoughts that I've just put into your heads, but I just wanted to pause there and say, are there any questions or considerations in terms of how the ethical conduct of the individual and the collective ethical conduct of the company will and should be managed into the future? We are saying that it will be through the association that the company belongs to. And if there is an individual who has managed to become professionally designated, who no longer works for an IAB company, it might very well be that the professional body still refers that matter to the IAB for ethical investigation, even if the company is not a member of the IAB. In that instance, there would be charges and costs involved, but that's how you would manage that kind of a situation. Any questions or concerns in that regard? Okay, great. Let me move on then. Okay. So I'm at the stage now of saying that the commitment which we need from companies is as follows. Number one, we need you, the CEOs, to see the value and to agree with the value proposition of this professional body. There's no question about that. And it'll take time and it'll take a lot of explanation, a lot of interaction, not only with you collectively as CEOs, but internally in your company, making presentations to your management, to your staff, so that everybody gets on board with what it is we're trying to achieve. We need CEOs to submit their companies for the pilot of the first three designations, the technical, the operational, and the professional practitioner designations that are on offer from the professional body. We need CEOs to start seeing and referring to practitioners as professionals in terms of the three categories, technical, operational, professional. And I realize that these are very unsexy, non-sexy terms, particularly in your sector of industries. However, what we're really saying is that you would map your jobs to the technical, the operational, the professional level of job as has been done, by the way, by the very first designation center we have a relationship with, and that's Blue Magnet, that you would map those jobs to these designations. And so you would know that a particular set of jobs falls into the operational category or the professional category or the technical category. We are never going to have a bargaining council. Well, never, I should never say never, but at this stage, we are not going to have a bargaining council in the digital sector. We might end up through the MAC Charter Council with some kind of a job grading system in place. Who knows down the line? But at that stage, that is where we would then map those grades to these three levels or these three bands of job categories within the digital sector. We want CEOs to nominate their senior practitioners and to be nominated themselves for purposes of attaining the Master Digital Professional designation. By the second stage of 2019, we want to be considering people and applications for the Master Digital Professional designation because we're recognizing the true heroes of the industry and the sector, because we're wanting those individuals to formally be recognized at a master's level and be giving something back at a more senior level into the industry and into the sector. And we want CEOs to encourage their staff to achieve professional recognition and to make it mandatory within a comfortable period of time when employment happens. Down the line, and certainly in other industries and sectors I work in, we've got to a stage where companies are saying in their letters of appointment and their job descriptions that within a year of yours having started, you must have obtained a professional designation from the professional body for digital practitioners, as an example. Within 2-year period, the period is not the issue, but it is the notion that you bind your staff to eventually having to be recognized as professional practitioners in terms of what they do. Either because when that happens, you will then confirm their permanent employment, or because when that happens, you will give them an improved grade, or alternatively, improved conditions of employment, including their pay and remuneration. That's ultimately where we're trying to go with this model that we're implementing. That is the kind of commitment we need from you, the companies out there. Because ultimately, and then I'll take questions, ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, the point is this. It is about the public compact, which on the one hand says, or should say, only do business with a digital company which is a member of an association such as the IABSA, because there is an acceptable level of accountability and responsibility. And on the other hand, only interact with practitioners who are professionally designated by the professional body for digital practitioners, because they are then accountable in terms of their competence, their ongoing lifelong learning on the one hand, and for their ethical and acceptable behavior on the other. Now that is where we're trying to get with this mechanism that we're building. And at that, let me hand over to you and ask you, are there any questions or comments or even concerns that you want to express at this stage? Any comments?
So, yeah, this is Jared again. So, obviously, we would love as a business to be part of the guinea pigs of this thing, and I'm very happy to commit to that. I just would want to sit down with you and drill into a couple of details, but in principle, we will bring our support.
Thank you, Jared. I really appreciate that. Thank you for your help. Anybody else want to say anything? Jan Hendrik, let me put you on the spot and let me ask you, because I know that at some stage you were talking about both from a training point of view, but also within the Pretoria community from a professional designation perspective, actually being part of this operation. Now that you've had an opportunity to see this discussion and be part of this discussion, are you still thinking along those lines?
There we go. I would thank you for the opportunity. Absolutely. I think it's exceptionally exciting. I think from where we are situated in the Pretoria area, we will definitely be more than willing to be part of this, both from a pilot point of view, as well as to take this further. I think my main question at this stage is, what's the next step? What's the next step? What are we going to do from here going forward?
All right. So, yeah, Henry, with yourself particular, I will be in touch. We will have a meeting. We will talk. I'll show you the designation model. We'll talk about the designation model and what's required. Look, make no mistake. As a designation center, it is an income generating opportunity because of the services provided. The professional body doesn't make that income. It is made and it is shared with the professional body by the designation center. The designation center also is entitled to do continuous professional development training, not formative qualification training, but continuous professional development training, as is the IAB, and we would want and we would expect the IAB to do. Jared, from your point of view, my greatest disappointment just historically has been that we are not yet offering IAB international CPD work that is offered within the global IAB community. And that's possibly something we could take offline, but I think a great opportunity to build into this professional body model. But certainly, Jan Hendrik, I will be in touch with you and thank you for that very generous offer. Jared, I see you do want to say something.
Just that global stuff, I'm not sure how relevant it is. So remember, the IAB is very publisher focused overseas. They don't have a lot of agency and service. So when I looked into that, there wasn't a lot of really interesting stuff. It's also quite expensive, but it may have progressed. I mean, I haven't looked at that for a few years. So I think it's worth re-engaging and seeing whether they've developed any additional material. But it wasn't super useful at the time that I looked at it.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Thank you for that. Yaron, can I just ask you, I see you're on the line, still on the line. As far as your companies are concerned, does what you've heard today appeal to you?
Most certainly, Ivor. Sorry, I was muted. We're very keen to get involved. As you know, we're also interested in other aspects of digital that we're talking to you about at the moment around more specific training and niche areas like cybersecurity and things like that. So generally, I think my team would be delighted to get involved, and we would like to participate.
Thank you so much. Okay, so sorry, Michelle.
Hi, Evil. Can you? Yes, hi. Thank you, and thank you for the invite as well to catch up on this, because I think last we chatted was quite a while back, and I think this was quite an introductory sort of session as to where the professional body is going. I'd also like to just have a separate session just to catch up and fill me in some of the pieces between when we last chatted and where it is now, just for me to get my head around a little bit more. But definitely something that we'd be interested in being a part of as well.
Thank you so much. Right. And Ronald, just from your point of view at Blue Magnet, thank you for the I suppose the interest you've shown in becoming the first designation center. I think it's absolutely critical. We look forward, by the way, to welcoming your graduates into the professional body as a component of the first set of pilots. And certainly, Blue Magnet are well on the way to the work that needs to be done within this context. So thank you very much, and certainly to your people, to Kerry and to Gillian. You've done great work. Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I am going to distribute a minute of today's discussion together with the slides. And also, this discussion itself will be an online discussion that I will send you a link to, because we do have the benefit of having recorded it. But thank you, everybody, for participating in the first CEO session. It's very, very important that the CEO group remain part of the professional body as a focus group, reflecting on all of our activities down the line. So we'll try to do this at least 2, if not 3 times a year. Thank you so much. And I will certainly be in contact with each of you individually. And Gillian, welcome. Thank you for joining us again on this site. And if you didn't hear it, Gillian, I was just thanking you for the work that you've done at Blue Magnet. It's been tremendous. All right, guys. So thank you very much. And without further ado, I am going to end this session. And thank you for participating.